Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of the series Exec Meet and Greets, where I'm pleased today to be joined by an ex-colleague of mine and a good friend, Sonia Sanderson, the Chief Investment Officer of EPPF. This is Leon Kralin, and Sonia, welcome.
Thanks, Leon. Nice seeing you again.
Very good to see you. I want to take you back a bit, and the reason I want to take you right back to the beginning, not all the way to the beginning, but back to the beginning of your career, is I think you've had an interesting journey. And I want to share that journey with our viewers because there's so much that can be learned from the path that you have taken, and I suppose the pivoting that you've done along that path. So let's go back a little bit to your studies, what you studied and how things changed through that process, and ultimately what was the first job that you did?
Sure, that's quite a while back, but I will try and remember all of the detail. After matric, I went to Northwest University and I studied a BSc, so just a generic BSc. My two favorite topics from school days were geography and mathematics, so I just went for my true love. Actually, at that point, I got a Telkom bursary to also include informatics or IT in my degree. So it was roughly mathematics, informatics, and geography and geology that I then added. Come the end of my BSc 3-year term, I had to decide how to specialize and wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I certainly knew that I always wanted to do mathematical thinking because I think that's one of my biggest strengths is to help you think logically about problems. But I certainly at that point thought that I would, go more into geology and those kinds of careers because I like to be outside. I certainly never thought that I would end up in financial services. But I always had admiration for the value that you can add in financial services. So a lot of my professors and advisors at the time suggested to me to look at actuarial science. So I therefore decided at that point in time that I should do a BCom, which I sort of did over a holiday and got BCom status and moved on to do my honors and masters in economics, econometrics, statistics, so that I've got a good broad grounding in terms of financial topics as well as mathematical topics. At that point in time, Northwest University started to put an actuarial degree together, and they asked me whether I would help with that program. So I lectured portfolio theory for a couple of years as part of the Business Mathematics and Informatics Center that also takes care of the actuarial degrees there. Which was really good because it gave me a really good grounding and a broad base of understanding in various topics. And then after that, I was approached by a friend who worked at PSG Escher to ask me whether I always wanted to just stay in the academic world or whether I wanted to join the practical world and come and do real problem solving. And it was appealing, the kinds of things that they were working on at that point in time. It was most of their clients at that point in time were sort of defined benefit pension funds that they looked after on a multi-manager basis. And I really got involved with a whole lot of topics and a whole lot of areas within the business. But that was really after I first lectured for a couple of years at Northwest University.
So that's interesting. I mean, you went from lecturing into the corporate space and not into a traditional investment field. I mean, I don't want to give away your age, but back in that day, multi-manager was new to South Africa, if not even the world, I suppose. So it wasn't something that you could have researched massively in depth. So was it something appealing, or was it just by accident that you ended up there and ultimately specialized in that space?
I think it was a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, sometimes I do believe there's a bigger hand that also guides your career, and certainly something that played a big role in my life. But it was appealing to me that I could use, I mean, I was originally approached to say, please come and help us sign off basic things like unit prices, help us decide whether the system is working or not. At that point in time, I was working with a fund actuary or with an actuary consulting on some of the funds, specifically on defined benefit calculations. asset liability modeling exercises and that sort of thing. And then eventually I started getting involved with more research topics. And I totally love that, because that's that problem solving space that really suited my background, I suppose, from a depth and a broadness of all the different topics that I'd studied up until that point. So things like how should you in South Africa slice and dice an equity portfolio, seeing as, to your point, most of the research at that point in time was done in US markets with much bigger depth and the opportunity set being completely different. What sort of portfolio construction tools can you use? What sort of product development tools can you use? What sort of, vast topics that we tapped at that point in time. And as a result of doing the research that really benefited the portfolio management side of the business, I eventually went into the portfolio management side as well. So you're right, it was really PSG Escher at that point in time. Investment Solutions was the main competitor. Obviously, Forbes today. But those were really the only two businesses at that point in time doing multi-management within South Africa, with very little research powering it. So we had to look at global concepts, try and adapt it to the South African market, and do a lot of research, which was something that I really enjoyed.
So PSG morphed ultimately into M-Cube, that became Advantage, and ultimately became the Momentum manager of managers, outcome-based solutions, and so on. You built your career through the ranks, ultimately through that, and we came together in our careers at Advantage. And you were the first person that I'd ever heard speaking about an investment philosophy or belief system within a multi-management house. So to me, multi-managers had always been the guys that select the managers. That
True.
was the sort of genius behind it all. You were the first person to talk about having a more sort of systematic way of going about that. So explain that in a bit more detail, what that means and where that came from in the thinking, because you were a significant part of the development of that with others that were around you.
Oh, thanks, Leon. Thanks for the compliment. Yes, it certainly came about, and I think you're spot on, right, to reflect. Even now in South Africa, I think a lot of multi-managers still base the bulk of their IP on selecting fund managers. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can add a lot of value that way. But I think as I sort of, in my exploration, also having a quantitative background, as I sort of explored more how you should put different fund managers together, what's so unique about those fund managers? What's it within their strategy that's really working? How much value are you getting from those fund managers? Do the fees that you pay them, are they commensurate with the value that you're getting from them? Of course, also a lot of innovation in financial services with derivatives and other instruments and overlays and different strategies evolving over time. And you read a lot of these. I mean, I gobbled up the Journal of Portfolio Management at one point. I just got all the best ideas globally from that. And although a lot of those ideas were written with asset managers in mind, for me, sitting in a multi-manager space, I would first off, as I was young, evaluate fund managers with that knowledge. And then later on, I realized, but a lot of that thinking is thinking that should influence the way that I structure the portfolio. And that it's not just about selecting fund managers, and that the value or the type of risk, the quality of the risk, as we always called it, in selecting fund managers is nowhere as good as selecting risk premiums that have over time proven themselves to work. And so I suppose it sort of started in an equity space, and over time it sort of evolved into really a multi-asset class portfolio construction thinking, and something that I think you can always keep thinking about, something that I'll never get tired of learning about. There's always newer advances. There's always fund managers changing their tactics and their strategy in terms of how they look at the market, and to use the best of being able to isolate their real value add, their information ratio predictability, or their ability to really call good companies from bad companies. That's really the essence of what I realized I need to get from active fund managers. And a lot of the other things that you got from them in the past, you can design yourself cheaper. So I guess in our journey together, we sort of moved away from just a pure multi-manager, manager selection business to more of a multifaceted portfolio construction business. And that's something that I really believe even now at EPPF is the essence to good investment management.
Yes, I think it's what strikes me when you speak in there is you speak about how you took investment management or portfolio management learning and you applied it in the selection of fund manager space. Firstly, from the perspective of assessing managers, but secondly, and probably more importantly, from the perspective of combining them together to, for the first time, manage risk
Yes.
in a manner where you have greater control, can have a greater impact. And just quickly pivoting for a second, we'll come back to your career. I keep on thinking about ESG and what's happened in South Africa and worldwide around ESG, where ESG has become, to a degree in certain places, a bit of a swear word, which people don't like to hear or talk about because they see it as being exclusionary. Now, I've always thought about ESG as a set of principles. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of analyzing. And ESG, or at least the principles thereof, on exactly the same comparison should be used or can be used in assessing fund managers. It's about getting to a depth of discussion to understand how they go about doing things. It can also be used to help blend different fund managers together in assessing risks that might be inherent within their portfolios to ultimately create sustainable portfolios. So on that note, to me, ESG is a good thing, but it's in the context of how you use it and what gets ultimately created off the back of that. Now, you, through your changes at Advantage into Momentum, you were Chief Investment Officer of Momentum Investments. You built up, and I want you to come back to what you built within Momentum Investments, not just you, but the overall team. But there, you've moved to EPPF, which is an interesting move. And I think everyone in the market went, that is interesting. But what you're doing right now, and a lot of the work you're doing around sustainability, I find fascinating, specifically with the comment I make about ESG. So that's a mouthful, but maybe you can talk about what you created with Momentum Investments, why the move to EPPF, and what's driving the sustainability speak that you have.
Sure. Okay, so let's start with Momentum. So I think the biggest component of my journey at Momentum was really exactly what we talked about, which is to have a research-based, a fundamental-based thinking in terms of how we do things and not just have a Me Too strategy in the market. I mean, we certainly came from having Momentum Asset Management and, as you said, Advantage or whatever we were called at that point in time, Momentum Outcome-Based Solutions, and then the alternatives business. But it's in the beauty of how you blend those things and how you use the different skills that I truly believe that you can create the best outcome, and which is also where the outcome-based philosophy came from, is that we evolved from just being a product provider to a place where we can say, well, what difference can we make to people's lives? And I don't want to take anything away from the team at Momentum, certainly a lot of good work, even subsequently, that they've done in that space. But a team of people that were united in terms of recognizing that you get different tribes, but that those tribes don't exist in isolation, because the consumer at the end of the day, or the member in a pension fund at the end of the day, is actually going to consume it in a package. And most pension funds in South Africa are actually multi-management funds. Most of them actually do split between different fund managers, and therefore to have the right set of IP, which I suppose consultants, asset consultants traditionally also do a lot of work on, but to have the right set of IP in terms of how you combine them and how it leads to an outcome that talks to a risk, a return, and to your second question, a sustainable or an impact perspective. You know, what is that world going to look like when our members retire? What is the fund manager going to look like when he gives you a certain return at the end of the month or 3 years from now? What is the community within which that fund manager or the member or that one day retires? What is that community going to look like? So over time, you just get better insight as you're evolving, and certainly that was the case for me, is how to harness the thinking of the asset management industry into packaging more holistic multi-manager solutions. And then sitting at a multi-manager at that point in time, or a full investment shop with all of these different skills, there's still a level of intermediation between you and the ultimate consumer or the ultimate client. And so for me, when the EPPF opportunity came up, not only was I thrilled to be associated with a brand that I thought already played a meaningful role within South Africa for its members, but also for society, but also thinking of how that philosophy and that grounding and that schooling that I had can be applied for the benefit of the member much more directly so than just in a product position. So the appeal was, first of all, that it is, of course, a scale player in the market with a very good reputation. I did my homework to look at the skills on this side and a really strong investment team, as well as a corporate governance structure behind it in the rest of the business. But for me, the biggest appeal was the kind of legacy I can create to be more meaningful in terms of the investment decisions that I make for the member, but then also for the investment community and also for our country ultimately. And it's really the intersect of those three different perspectives, if you will. I think all of us know risk and return go together. You can't take risk, or you can't generate return without taking risk. Same thing as every decision that you make has an impact, has some sort of an outcome. We just don't always measure it. We're just not always conscious about it. We're just not always deliberate and intentional about it. So for me to let the investment portfolio construction theory evolve into a space where you can properly, on an ex ante business basis, so forward-looking basis, measure those things and align it with the outcome that your member is expecting, and to actually do good, not just from a risk and return perspective, but also from an environmental and a social perspective. That's really for me the crux of investment management, and in short, the reason why I left Momentum. Of course, you want to grow, continue growing in your career, but it's also you want to be able to at the end of the day say you've made a meaningful difference. And for me, I felt like EPPF was the home that would make that happen. And up until now, I'm very happy that I've made that choice.
And I can see that in you. And I think what's interesting is that we speak about the inception of multi-management, but multi-management's a philosophy that has lived from way before us. Essentially,
100%.
anyone that split funds, which is the accepted norm, is multi-management at the end of the day. It's just a label that was ultimately given. And just like that is the norm, it's been a philosophy based historically on risk and return, where perhaps risk hasn't been properly understood, but has been professionalized over time by professional multi-managers, consultants, and so on.
Yes.
Still with a decent road to travel in that regard. But I really believe that, like you've been talking now, that third element, that third dimension, which is about what is the impact of your investments on your community, on the country that we're part of, it has to become the new norm.
Yes.
In particularly a country like ours in South Africa, where we need to drive economic growth, we need to drive infrastructure development. And unfortunately, the market tends to think about that as almost like it's philanthropic and that it will impact on returns. And I don't think that that's the case. So maybe just comment on that. How do you see the concept of sustainability or impact? Is it going to harm members' returns, or does it ultimately enhance their return?
Yeah, you made the point earlier, Leon, that of course you can use ESG, sustainability, and impact to harm returns. Of course, you can make decisions that just looks at an impact but doesn't take the risk and return into account. But I think it's quite the opposite. I think that impact actually generates more return. Impact actually is the source of return ultimately, especially in a country like South Africa, and especially right now. So let's call it almost from a moral perspective, I believe that there's an urgency to everything that we're thinking about, that on behalf of our members, we cannot delay anymore. We cannot afford, as an investment industry, as a pension fund industry, to delay decisions that also has a social and an environmental impact, or at least take that into consideration. So that's the moral perspective. And for that reason alone, I think that will never go away. Certainly not in South Africa anytime soon. But secondly, I think from a purely almost selfish financial return perspective, if you don't believe in companies, and if you don't invest in companies that you believe will ultimately be better than others, then you wouldn't care about sustainability, you wouldn't care about ESG. But if you believe that people will ultimately invest more in companies and businesses, whether listed, unlisted, whatever, that will be more sustainable, that will have a competitive moat from an environmental perspective, that do better in the world in terms of its social objectives, that looks after its staff better, that can retain staff better. I mean, all of those things we can unpack. But I believe those are actually the return engines that ultimately lead to better financial returns. So purely from a financial perspective, I've got a vested interest for my members to invest in impact investing, sustainable businesses, or sustainable future, because I believe they will ultimately get to better returns and our country will perform better. If our country performs better, then there will be more growth. And I mean, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think it's a very one-dimensional approach to think that impact or sustainable investing comes at the expense of financial returns. Yes, of course, I can invest in something that gives me an impact, but with zero financial return. But it's the sweet spot of those things together that's an absolute must-do for us, for our members, and for our country right now. So it will never go away, irrespective of the noise globally and irrespective a lot of the pressures that people are finding. I think it's good that we're evolving as an industry to question again, are we doing this for the right reasons? Are we measuring it the right way? I think that's a very good thing, but I don't think it will ever go away.
Yeah, so just like I spoke about the professionalizing of the management of risk, I think the professionalizing of the concept of sustainability is the part that we're on. And a entity like EPPF has such an important part to play in terms of creating that cultural change, which I think is necessary. And there's others in the market that are starting to get there, but everyone's still grappling with how to go about it. But at the end of the day, private capital is such a big part of the coffers in South Africa. It's probably unless there is buy-in from private capital, it's going to be very difficult to redress the past in South Africa. Let me just go back one step with you. I will always remember you for being fiercely team. And I even see it when I speak to you now around the importance of your team, that you mentioned the due diligence that you did and so on EPPF. What is that about? Where does that come from? What is it that's always made you, I'll use the term protective, but also just fiercely focused on the team and the team dynamics that you have?
Yes, I remember many conversations we had about that topic. For me, a team is what will make you succeed in investment management space. I'm sure you get individuals that are stars in their own right and can do a very good job. But maybe because I'm grounded enough to know that I don't know everything and that diversity does help in thinking, and that you make better decisions if you can soundboard with others and they can also challenge back. So for that reason, I really do believe that a solid team structure, however small or big your team is the first ingredient towards success in investment management. I really do believe that. I don't think one person, not even with AI and all the digital tools that we have at our disposal nowadays, I don't think one person can claim to thought of all the different angles on a problem, right? And so for me, it's always been an important lesson, is that as soon as you think that you know everything, or you've cracked the nut now on a particular topic, or here's the best new tool or methodology or whatever, someone will always come and give you a different perspective and something that you didn't think about. So to stay humble and to have the humility to realize that, yes, you can do certain things on your own, and is useful, but you definitely need to be humble enough to realize that the team makes you stronger. And not only that, for me, it also makes for a more pleasant working place. So everyone that I've worked with in my career, I tend to stay friends with. You sort of create a home, and that makes it a more holistic place to work. It makes it an easier place to share your problems with, to help each other out when all of us eventually go through tough times, whether from a decision-making perspective or a personal perspective. But it also, I just think it makes for much better investment decision-making. So yes, it's something that I like to invest in here at EPPF as well, and certainly something that I'll continue to invest in. We've, in any case, got such a small industry in South Africa. So to be able to build a network of people that you can bounce ideas off and you can learn from and you can challenge each other, I think is very valuable in one's career.
So I'd say for a fact that your team is lucky to ultimately have you. You'll always have their backs, but you'll always be fiercely demanding. I can assure them of that. This past weekend, I made a comment to a financial advisor on LinkedIn where they were talking about the asset management community demanding their time and to a degree becoming rude in that demand, essentially, which I fully understood because I mean, like, at the end of the day, these financial advisors need to serve their clients and don't have the time just to spend with the service providers. At the same time, however, I try to encourage a little bit of humility because we need competition in order to drive thoughts and ideas. Now, as EPPF, you would have fund managers calling on you, I'm sure, left, right, and center. What is it that helps you in those circumstances? You've known these managers for years and years. In your current role, what is it that you're looking for from that community to bring to you, to spark ideas with you in order to enhance what you're doing?
Yeah, that's always an interesting topic. So first off, we also don't get enough time to spend with everyone because it's not just South African fund managers. Of course, it's a whole lot of global managers, and you'll be surprised every day new names pop into my diary. So there's certainly a lot of requests for time. The ones I personally like to spend more time with, and people that I'll phone up if I've got problems or something that I want to test on someone, are certainly the ones that I feel spent the time to know your business and your problems. And in our instance, as a fund, EPPF, what are we going through? What are the challenges that we've got? What are our members asking for? What is the Eskom backdrop and what are they asking for? Are we thinking about all those things? Can it make me stronger in what I do? We often, and I mean, I get that asset managers are product providers ultimately, and they're looking for scale, and so they like to come to the scale players. I've even had people say to me quite often that, uh, we're a stumbling block. If we don't give them money, someone else won't give them money because people want to see the GPF or PIC and EPPF are there. And so you feel a bit guilty if you don't give someone money from the beginning for their businesses to succeed. But that's sort of tongue in cheek. I think the relationships that's worked best for us are the ones where there's a values alignment. So they share your value in wanting to leave a legacy and to wanting to make a difference for the member. That they therefore understand that sometimes it comes in a product package. Doesn't mean it can't come in a product package, but often it does not come in a product package. But it's often having the network of skills available to test, to trial, to learn together, to innovate together, to make mistakes and also correct from there, but to not be shy to share some of the IP. I think it's a conversation we chatted about last week at the GIPS event as well, that asset managers are very commercially driven. They typically won't invest in research if that research is there for someone else to use. What's very refreshing for me at pension funds is that we've got a different perspective of it. We're not as driven by a commercial perspective. Yes, we want to generate good returns for our members, but because we don't have the same shareholder structure and people looking over our shoulder for what we deliver, not just the member outcome, we can actually invest and afford to share ideas and brainstorm more with others. And I've had the pleasure of doing that locally as well as with global networks, other really solid, really professional, sophisticated pension funds that we can work with, share ideas with, and learn from. And so to have that type of relationship with fund managers, I think is the best type of space to be in. I realize there needs to be a commercial angle for fund managers to also make it work because they run businesses, but there's something in there to be said that you don't just come and show me your best performance over the last few quarters and, it's a product push environment, but more solutions. Let's find solutions together. Let's understand the problems and find solutions together. And then, of course, those that, as I said, want to leave a legacy, those that from a sustainability belief perspective, share in our values as EPPF when it comes to the impact that we want to make in society, the transformation, the gender equality agenda that we're trying to drive, the biodiversity and climate considerations that we've got. So if it's not just here's my good performance, please give me assets, but someone sort of holistically understanding that world that we're trying to solve for. That's the best kind of relationship for me with asset managers.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. I mean, we need to invest in the future because the future will be our success. And the
True.
same applies to any asset manager. So yes, there's the commercial need, that's obvious. And everyone respects that. But at the end of the day, we all need to be making that investment in the future. Otherwise, there won't be much more growth. That's just the reality of it. And I'm not saying everybody grasps that, but again, I think that's part of the role that the likes of an EPPF can drive in South Africa. We're running out of time, or have run out of time. So just a couple of quick questions. Private markets, illiquidity, valuation concerns, risk of investments, high fees, and so on. Yet it's one of the areas in South Africa that requires investment development. How do you see that, and what's your message to all trustees of retirement funds out there that are the custodians of so much wealth?
Yeah, I think there's via various forums, whether via Batseta or the Asset Owner Forum, but just pension funds coming together and having lots of these conversations. We realize that there's a need for us to be more effective. It's not just our president that's asking the pension fund industry to be, and the Minister of Finance, of course, asking us to be more proactive. But I think pension funds themselves realize that and they want to work together. I do think there are certain impediments and certain risks that pension funds typically grapple with. I mean, EPPF obviously have the benefit of having its own investment team, and so have a handful of other pension funds. But most other pension funds don't have full-time investment staff that can help them go and look at the risks and quantify it and have the right systems and all of it. And they've got other day jobs. It's a very complicated world for the average trustee right now. So to be able to pool more skills together, to risk share, to be able to invest in a world where we can get the fees lower for each of the members, but by pooling some of the investments together, I think is a phenomenal trend that I know for a fact will continue in South Africa. We're only really at the starting point. Everyone going at it on their own, but we realize that we'll be stronger together and that we can actually share. You can still be independent in your investment decision making, but we can share IP, we can share pooling, we can share fees, we can share risks, etc. So for me, the advice would be that other pension funds just be part of those conversations, to ask the right questions. We all ultimately would want to add to the real economy. We all ultimately want the real economy in South Africa to grow. And to do that in a world where the listed universe is shrinking, there's a bit of a decoupling between the economics in South Africa and what the man on street is feeling versus what the listed universe is showing. We actually want our listed universe over time to have a stronger link with our economy so that we can all contribute to it. And to get that done, we as pension funds need to show the outside world and the retail investor that these are good investment opportunities and that we can actually de-risk it to a large extent by using the right, of course, financial innovation and structures and vehicles and all of those kinds of things. But we've got a role to play there. I think we need to keep asking, we need to keep probing. That's the way that we will not only do right by our members, but we will also create a legacy in terms of a better South Africa for those members and their children one day. And I think there's various forums in which to participate, but that would be my call to action, is to participate in those.
Okay, excellent. So I think we've given the audience a good feel for who you are through this conversation, albeit that we haven't spoken specifically about you, but there's been more than enough to understand who Sonja Saunderson is. So, closing question, what would your advice be to any young aspiring investment professional that's still at varsity or now starting up work or hoping to find a job ultimately in this field?
I'll give them the advice that I would say was my number one success factor, and that is to work hard. And I know it sounds basic and there's got to be more to it, but invest in your own career by working hard. There's no, people like quick fixes nowadays, instant gratification, and maybe the digital world and AI and cell phones and all of those things made it worse. But As much as younger generation don't like hearing it, there's something to be said for going through the motions, earning your stripes, putting the hard slog in and getting to a point where you really have mastered something before you move on to something else. Keep an open mind, be curious, learn as much as you can, of course. Build a strong network. It's another thing I've learned in my career. Without a network and without others that you can share ideas with, it can be a very lonely place. And have some heroes in the industry. Look up to some people and see what they do. What are they doing? Learn from them. Also recognize their mistakes, because all of us are human. But yeah, get your feelers out there. But the number one advice from my side would be stay grounded and work hard.
Yep, no replacement for hard work, that's for sure. So in closing then, you mentioned having heroes in the industry. So I lectured a little bit over the past year or so, and it was quite interesting to be standing up there as the so-called expert speaking to these young aspiring minds. Do you think you're going to go back there, having started your career? Do you see yourself as someone lecturing again at some point?
Yes, I do see myself doing that again, even if it's part-time or whatever, but certainly the reward you get from making a difference in someone else's life, I've learned as you get older, becomes much more valuable than just the financial return that you get out of the time that you spend on other things. So yes, I'd love to do that again. And I also am building up a network of youngsters that like to pick my brain every now and then, or just have a coffee, that I can be like a big sister to in the industry. So I hope I can at least informally impart some of my experience that way as well.
Okay, excellent. So, Sonia, first of all, on behalf of EBNetStream and our viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'd like to congratulate you not just on the success that you've had, but actually on the journey that you've taken. And over that journey, the values that you have, I don't know if it's aspired to or held all along that path. And that's showing in your movements as well, and what you're doing and how you are building your career, and it's evident. So
Thanks,
congratulations
Sean.
from that perspective.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
That was Sonia Saunderson, Chief Investment Officer of EPPF, and this is Leon Kralin of EBNetStream.